Father, I broke my votes. The voice crossed the confessional grid like a cold whisper. It was not tall. It was not a shaky. It was controlled, dangerously controlled. I had seen many people kneel before me over the years, men who cried like children, women who held rosaries until they bleed their fingers, young people who confessed to sins that barely understood, old men who brought to blame for decades, but there was never a silence as heavy as what was installed that afternoon. On the other side of the grid, the figure dressed in black remained motionless. The veil covered almost the whole face. Only the lips were visible, pale, tight in a thin line. And the hands were intertwined hard, the white fingers of so much pressure. She squeezed the silver crucifix that hung her neck with an almost violent intensity. "Tell me, my daughter." My voice sounded weaker than I wanted, maybe because I already knew. Perhaps because at that moment something inside me realized that this confession would not be like the others. She took a deep breath, slowly, as if gathering courage to say something that should never be said aloud. "I loved someone, priest, and I sinned." The confessional smelled of old wood and candle wax. The light that entered the small side window cut the air into a thin line, illuminating only the slowly floating powder, like small lost spirits in the dense air. Outside, the church was empty, only the distant echo of steps on the center nave, probably the janitor finishing his round before dusk. It was Tuesday, 4:30 in the afternoon, the dead time, the time when almost no one was confessed. But she came. I saw her in the side door alone, with slow and measured steps. The black habit dragged the cold stone floor, producing a soft, almost ghostly sound. She didn't look around. He did not hesitate before the empty benches. He did not bless herself as she passed the holy water. He walked straight to the confessional and entered. When the door closed behind her, the silence swallowed everything. I heard her sound kneeling. The habit fabric brushes against the wood, the controlled breath, the weight of the body against genuflexory. And I knew at that moment that that would not be a common confession. There is something in the way certain people enter the confessional. You learn to realize with the years, the gestures, the posture, the rhythm of the breath. Everything communicates something even before the first word is said. Some come in quickly, eager to pour their faults and out relieved. Others go slowly, dragging the weight of old secrets. And there are those who enter as who goes to the execution itself. She was of this last type. His faith was visible. It was in the gestures, in posture, in the way the crucifix hanging around the neck. But his words carried shadows. He said he had broken votes that could never be restored. And when he got up at the end of that afternoon, I understood that some blame even his own faith can forgive. But that was just in the end. In the beginning there was still hope. "Considerations a sin of love?" I asked, keeping the pastoral tone, trying to calm it down with the soft voice I have been using for decades. "My daughter, God knows the human heart. He understands the weaknesses of the flesh. He knows that." "No." The word cut my phrase like a sharp blade. "No, Father. The Lord does not understand." She paused. He took a deep breath, as if the air donated upon entering the lungs. "I am not here asking for understanding. I did not come to look for words of comfort." His voice was even lower, almost a ghostly whisper. "I'm here because if I don't tell someone, I'll go crazy, and I can't tell anyone else. Just the Lord, just here, in this place." I felt my stomach tighten. A cold sensation came down by my spine. There was something deeply disturbing in the way she said. It was not regret. It was not a fault in the common sense. That guilt that people bring after small sins. It was weight. Such a weight that it seemed to be crushing its bones, bends the curve, vertebra by vertebra. "Then tell me," I said, adjusting my posture, more serious now. "Without fear, God listens through me, but he does not judge how men judge." She laughed. It was a short, bitter, almost inaudible laugh, a broken sound that looked more like a contained sob. "God, maybe he doesn't judge, but the church would never accept what I did." "I miss him by a man," she started slowly, like those who gropes in the dark, looking for the right words. He said he had entered the order at 22, too young, some said, but she was sure. Unshakable faith, called clear. Her parents had tried to dissuade her. They wanted to expect more ALG a few years, but she insisted. He said he felt God's presence in every prayer, in every mass, in every moment of silence. He had made the solemn votes 3 years later: chastity, poverty, obedience, without hesitation, no doubt, with such a strong conviction that it impressed to Mother Superior. For years he lived faithfully. He woke up before dawn for the morning prayers. He worked at the hospital administered by the order, taking care of patients, cleaning wounds, holding hands of dying. He prayed his third every night before bed, did not question, did not doubt, until he appeared. "Who, my daughter?" "A man." Pause. Long, loaded, but not any man, priest. I felt cold down my spine, the way she said that, as if each word weighed tons. He was a priest. I should have predicted, but even so, hearing that out loud was like punching the chest. I was silent for a few seconds, letting the words land in the dense air of the confessional. Outside, I heard the church bell ring 5 hours, 5 slow, melancholic chips echoing through the stone walls. "Continue," I said finally. Without fear, she took a deep breath. His hands shake slightly. I could see through the shadows on the grid. He said he had been transferred to the neighboring parish 2 years ago. Father Matthew, young, 31 years, charismatic, dedicated. Everyone liked him. The nuns of the community praised their kindness. Parishioners filled the church when he celebrated the Mass. Even the bishops welcomed him as a promise to the diocese. He looked perfect. "And I thought too," she said, her embargoed voice. "At first it was just admiration, nothing more. The first conversations were innocent, casual meetings after Sunday Masses. He commented on the readings of the day. She agreed, added some reflection. Quick, educated, superficial conversations. But then the small gestures began. He lent theology books. It returned with notes on the banks. He smiled as he read. She too. Conversations about St. Augustine, about Teresa d'Avila, about the Spanish mystics. Hours of dialogue that looked minutes. When I realized, she said, it was too late, and the conversations got longer, deeper, more personal. He began to visit her in the convent, always with a plausible excuse, bring diocese documents, discuss community projects, coordinate events among parishes, always with other people around, always within the rules, until there was no one else. "How did this happen?" I asked, trying to understand the progression. "Slowly, Father, so slowly that we didn't realize, or maybe we didn't want to realize." She described with a raw honesty that completely disarmed me. First were the hands. He touched his shoulder as he passed. She didn't move away. A hand gripping that lasted seconds more. Looks that extended beyond the necessary. Smiles that meant more than words. Then came the conversations at night. He called with questions about projects. She answered. They spoke for hours, above all about nothing, about your childhood, your fears, your secret doubts about faith. And I felt, live, she confessed. For the first time in years I felt sight of, understanding, important. And then, my voice came out hoarse. So, it happened. It was on a December afternoon, cold, rainy. She was alone in the convent library, organizing book donations. He appeared soaked, saying he needed some old text for a sermon. They stayed together between the shelves, talking, laughing low, too close. "I don't know who started," she said, her voice breaking. But suddenly, we were kissing. Silence. "And after that, Father, after that we couldn't stop. They said it would be the last time. After the first time, and after the second, and after the third. They always swore that it would not happen again. It always happened. Hidden meetings, looks crossed during the Masses, messages deleted, lies invented, votes repeatedly, consciously, without mercy. How long? 8 months. 8 months. Almost an entire year of deliberate sin, of daily lies, of desecrated sacraments." I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words, trying to keep the pastoral calm I learned over decades. "My daughter, repentance is the first step towards forgiveness. If you recognize the error, if you want to truly regret and seek." "Priest," she interrupted me again, but this time his voice was different, trembled, broken, desperate. "I didn't come here to confess, just for that." My heart stopped for a moment. "So why?" She was silent for a long moment, so long I thought she wouldn't answer. I could hear your breath across the grid, fast, uncontrolled, almost panting. When he finally spoke, the words came out like splinters of glass. Because there were consequences, priest. Terrible consequences. Isier, my mind started working fast. Consequences. What did that mean? Did anyone discover? Was there blackmail? Threats? The bishop knew. But then she said something that froze my blood. I got pregnant. The confessional seemed to shrink around me, the wooden walls pressing against my body. The air was thin. I couldn't answer immediately. The words were stuck in the throat, refusing to leave. A pregnant nun, a priest, broken vows, monumental scandal, destruction of 2 consecrated lives. "My daughter," I started, but I didn't know how to continue. "I found out 3 months ago." His voice was now almost a ghostly whisper. 3 months, priest, and he doesn't know." "Don't you know? How don't you know?" "I didn't tell. I couldn't tell, because..." She stopped. He took a deep breath, a painful, suffocated sound. "Because if I told, everything would collapse. His life, the order, the parish, all." I understood the weight of that decision, the silence she carried alone for 3 months, the terror, absolute loneliness. "And what did you do?" I asked, almost afraid of the answer. Silence, far away, heavy, mortal. I had to make a decision, Father. The hardest decision of my life." His voice was just a thread now, almost imperceptible. I was desperate, alone, unable to tell anyone, unable to ask for help, and the time was passing. My body was changing. Soon someone would notice. She paused, breathed, and when he spoke again there was something broken in his voice, something irreparable. So I chose to get rid of him. And the silence that followed was absolute. There were no sounds, nor of the church, not even the street, nor of the world. Only the dense and suffocating void that filled the confessional as dark water. My mind struggled to process what I had just heard. Get rid of him. The words echoed, distorted, terrible. "My daughter," I started, but my voice failed. "I know what you are thinking," she said quickly, as if she had to explain before I judged her. "I know, but you need to understand. There was no other way. There is always, no." The word came out like a suffocated cry. There was no. If I had that child, everything would be lost. Everything. He would be expelled. I would be kicked out. Our families would know. We would be destroyed. She was crying now. Low, contained, desperate sobs. So I did what I had to do, but there was something in his voice. Something beyond despair. Something worse. "But that's not all, priest." His voice fell to a ghostly whisper. "What we did later, what I did after the decision." Silence. Such a heavy silence that it seemed to suck the air from the confessional, leaving only the emptiness. I waited, my heart hitting hard, sweaty hands, throat dry, and then she said, in a voice that barely seemed human, "It wasn't as I thought it would be. It didn't end as it should have ended." My blood froze. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, Father." She paused, and I could hear her shivering across the grid, that something was terribly wrong. Something was terribly wrong. The words were suspended in the air like poisonous smoke. I knew I should say something, offer comfort, guide her spiritually. It's what a priest does. This is what I should do for over 30 years of priesthood. But I couldn't, because there was something in the way she said that. Something that made each word sound like glass, breaking slowly, shrapnel by shrapnel. "Explain me, my daughter." My voice came out more rough than I intended. "What exactly went wrong?" She was silent. A long, disturbing silence that stretched like a shadow growing on the walls. I could hear her breathe across the grid, short, fast, irregular breaths, like someone on the edge of a nervous collapse. I can't explain everything at once, Father. I need to say slowly." His voice trembled. "If I say everything now, the Lord won't understand. No one would understand. No one can understand what I went through." "Try," I said, forcing calm in my voice, trying to keep that pastoral tone I use for decades. "Slowly. No hurry. I'm here to listen." She nodded. I couldn't see clearly through the dark grid, but I noticed the light movement of her head in the shadows like a ghostly silhouette. "I didn't know who to turn to," she started, the trembling voice, every word costing a visible effort. "I couldn't look for a city doctor. It would be recognized immediately. The habit, the face, the way I speak. Everyone knows me here. And if anyone knew..." She paused, swallowed dry. I could hear the sound of the saliva down his throat. So I looked. Someone else. My stomach tightened like a hand closing around a stone. "Another person," I repeated slowly. "Who?" "A woman." His voice fell to an almost imperceptible whisper. "A woman who does that kind of thing, discreetly. No questions." Heavy silence. "A woman nominated by someone of trust?" "No, Father." She laughed bitterly, a dry, broken sound. There was no reliable anyone. How could there be? I was completely alone. I found her name, on the internet, in a forum, in these dark places where desperate women help each other, where they share addresses, numbers, instructions. I felt a cold down the spine, vertebra by vertebra. Internet, secret forums, desperate women exchanging information on clandestine procedures, places where the law is not enough, where despair surpasses fear. "And did you go to her?" "Yes." The word came out like a sigh of pain. "I went, alone, in the darkness." She described the scene with a photographic accuracy that scared me. It was on a Tuesday night almost 2 months ago. Tuesday, because it was the day when Mother Superior had meetings outside the convent, the day when vigilance was smaller. She waited until all the other nuns were sleeping. He lay on the dressed bed, looking at the ceiling, telling the minutes. When the silence became absolute, he rose. He wore civilian clothes that had kept since before entering the order. Faded jeans, a simple blouse, navy blue, a coat that smelled the mold. "I looked at myself in the mirror," she said, the distant voice, "and I didn't recognize myself. Without the veil, without the habit, I looked strange. Someone I met a long time ago and forgot." He left the side door of the convent. the one that gives the back garden. The lock range a little, but no one wakes up with that sound. She knew. I had tested it before. He walked 3 blocks to the main avenue, quick but not running, trying to look normal. Just one more woman coming back home. He took a taxi around the corner. The driver looked at me strangely, she said. I was out of the habit, but it still looked displaced. Eerily short hair, irregularly cut, without makeup. Old clothes, out of fashion, hands as hard as work. He must have thought I was strange, maybe dangerous. Gave the address. The driver said nothing, just turned on the GPS and drove in silence. The address was in a peripheral neighborhood, away from the center, far from the church, far from anywhere she knew. Poorly lit streets, old buildings with cracked facades, garbage accumulated on the sidewalks. The taxi stopped in front of a 4-story building with peeled walls and moisture stains rising through the sides. 3rd floor, apartment 304. The specificity of detail made me swallow dry. She paid the taxi in cash, crumpled notes that had stored for months. The driver told quickly, without looking at her, and left before she even reached the door of the building. Climbed the stairs. There was no elevator. Each step rangs under its feet. The corridor smelled of old food, cigarette, and something more, something chemical, medicinal. Knocked on the 304 door. 3 light beats. Waited. The door opened slowly. Just a crack, and I observed it through the security current. "Are you the one you called?" a woman's voice asked. Yes. The current was removed. The door opened. And this woman, what did she say when she saw her? Nothing at first. The nun's voice was more controlled now, reporting facts as if reading a medical report. She just opened the door completely and let me get in. She didn't smile. She didn't greet it, just, she watched me. The woman was about 40, thin, hair stuck in a tight bun, deep dark circles, hands with protruding veins. She was wearing surgical gloves, the nun said. Blue gloves. It scared me. It made everything look real. The apartment was small, integrated room and bedroom, tiny kitchen, bathroom with the door ajar, and in the center of the room, covered with white sheets, a table. It was not an ordinary dining table. It was a makeshift stretcher, with metal supports on the sides. The place smelled of alcohol, disinfectant, and something more. Something organic. Old blood, maybe. She asked me as many weeks ago I was. I said. She shook her head slowly and said she still gave time, but it would be painful, very painful. Silence. I paid for money, 500 reais, everything I had saved over the years, keeping coins and small notes left over from the convent purchases. She told the cedul slowly, one by one, holding each note against the light to see if they were false. I looked at me with an expression, empty, without judgment, without mercy, just empty. After counting the money, the woman saved the notes in a locked metal box. He washed his hands, put new gloves, prepared instruments on a tray next to the table, and then, so she asked me to lie down. The nun's voice broke. She swallowed dry, trying to continue, fighting the words that seemed to tear her throat. I lay down at the table. The sheet was cold. I closed my eyes. I tried to pray. I prayed more than ever in life, Father. I asked forgiveness. I asked God to protect me. I asked him to end up fast and that I could wake up the next day as if nothing had happened. "And it's over?" I asked, knowing that the answer would be no. No. She described what happened next with a clinical coldness that shivered me to the bones. The woman started the procedure. He said it would be fast. He said the pain would pass in a few minutes. He said that many others had already gone through that and survived, which was more common than people imagined. But something went wrong from the first moment. The pain was unbearable, she whispered, and for the first time since she had entered the confessional, her voice treated completely. Much, much worse than she said it would be. It was like something was tearing me inside. I tried not to scream. I bit a cloth she gave me, but it was impossible. It hurt so much. It hurt in a way that I didn't even know it was possible to feel. The woman was visibly nervous. Their movements, which were previously accurate, were hesitant. She was sweating. It murmured something low, profanity mixed with instructions that gave itself. He said the nun was reacting badly, that her body was resisting more than usual. Maybe it would be better to stop. Maybe they had to try another day. But the nun begged to continue. I couldn't go back to the still pregnant convent, Father. I couldn't. I had gone too far. I had already crossed that door. So I begged her to continue. He said he would take it. He said she wouldn't stop. And she continued, but then the bleeding began. A lot of blood, the nun said, and her voice now seemed to come from far away as if she were submerged. Much more than she expected. Much more than it was normal. She was pale. Completely pale. He said something was wrong. He said profanity. He said I needed to go to a hospital immediately. And did you go? No. The word came out firm, definitive, unshakable. I couldn't go. If I went to a hospital, they would ask questions. they would see my face. Some nurse would recognize me. They would call the police, they would investigate, they would find it all, my life would end, so I just waited. What did you wait? I waited for the bleeding to stop, or I expected to die. Absolute silence. It took hours, Father. Endless hours. The woman stayed with me, but I saw fear in her eyes. She was holding towels, tried to stop, but it seemed no use. She brought medications, injections. I don't know what they were. I just felt the bite and a numbness spreading. The woman repeated that the nun could die, that if that happened it would have to discard the body, that could not call anyone. And I didn't care, Father. The nun laughed low, a disturbing sound. At that moment, death seemed easier, simpler than coming back and pretending everything was normal. But she didn't die. Slowly, very slowly, the bleeding has decreased. The pain continued, but it was bearable. The woman cleared everything. It burned the towels in a metal bucket in the bathroom. The smell of burnt fabric filled the apartment. She gave me antibiotics, analgesics, instructions on how to take care of me, and then she sent me away. And she managed to go back to the convent before dawn. He took another taxi. He told the driver that he had had a smaller accident. Nothing seriously. He didn't ask anything else. He entered the same side door, moving like a ghost. He climbed the stairs slowly, each set in agony, holding the wall not to fall, locked in the room. He lay on the bed, still dressed, and waited. He waited for the pain to pass. He waited for the bleeding to stop completely. He waited to be able to think again. No one noticed? I asked, genuinely incredulously. No. The next day, when they knocked on my door for the morning prayers, I said I had a strong flu, high fever. Sister Teresa brought me tea. Sister Lucia brought soup. I stayed 3 days without leaving the room. They had food. On the third day, he managed to get up. He showered. He wore the habit. He returned to his duties, and no one suspected anything. But there was something different, Father. I knew, feel, as if a part of me had died in that apartment and never turned again. But there was something else, something she had not yet said. I could feel for the way she paused between certain phrases, how it chose the words with excessive care. As he avoided certain details, he diverted from certain memories. My daughter, I said, leaning slightly toward the grid, trying to see better through the shadows. What are you not telling me? Silence, far away, tense, loaded. Father, she finally said, but her voice was different now, lower, darker, with a new, more dense weight. The procedure worked. Technically, yes, what was inside me came out. It was expelled. But she stopped. He took a deep breath, a painful, suffocated sound. But it wasn't what I imagined it would be. My heart accelerated. I felt the palms of my hands sweat. Explain. I thought it would be abstract. That would be just blood, fabric, clots. Something I wouldn't recognize. Something I could discard without thinking too much. His voice was breaking again, word by word. But it wasn't like that, priest. She paused long. I could hear her physically shaking across the grid, her whole body shaking. When I returned to the room on the third day, it was still eliminating. And then, when I went to the bathroom, I saw it. See what? Silence. Such a deep silence that it seemed to suck all the light, all the air, the whole life of the confessional. I saw the form, small, very small, but recognizable. My blood froze. My daughter, there was fingers, priest. His voice was just a thread now, almost imperceptible. Tiny fingers, 5 in each hand. I could see. I could tell. I closed my eyes tightly, feeling my stomach turning, a wave of nausea rising. And I panicked. Full, total. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't throw in the trash as if it were nothing. I couldn't leave there. I couldn't call anyone, so She stopped, the irregular breath. What did you do? I wrapped in a clean cloth, a white cloth that I used to clean the altar, and I hid. The words fell like heavy stones in the confessional. Hid? I repeated, not believing what I heard. Where? In the garden of the convent. She was crying now, finally. Low, suffocated, desperate sobs. There is a place in the back, where no one goes, near the old wall, where weeds grow without control, a forgotten corner. I fell with their own hands. The earth was damp, soft, silence. No one knows, just me, and now, the Lord. My mind struggled to process all that. A life interrupted, a tiny body buried in secret, a nun carrying this monstrous weight alone, day after day, night after night. And the priest? I finally asked, my voice coming out hoarse. Father Matthew, he never suspected anything? No. She laughed bitterly, a broken and lifeless sound. He knows nothing. He keeps celebrating masses, preaching about morals, about purity, about the value of life. And I sit in the first row listening and pretend that nothing happened. Do you still see you? Long pause. Yes, every week, in the masses, in the pastoral meetings. He smiles at me. Great. ask how I am, and I smile back. And you still, no, she cut my question abruptly. No more. We ended 2 months ago, in the same week of the procedure. I said we needed to stop, that God was watching ourselves, that we could no longer. He agreed. He said it had been a terrible mistake, that God would forgive us if we truly repented. She laughed again, a broken laugh without humor, loaded with cruel irony. But he doesn't know, Father. He doesn't know there is much more than regret. He doesn't know there is a brand, a permanent brand, a small grave in the garden he spends every week unknowingly. A brand, yes. His voice fell to a ghostly whisper, because that's not all that happened. There's something else, something I haven't told, something worse. My heart fired. What? She hesitated. I could hear his irregular, interspersed breath like someone on the verge of a panic attack. The woman in the apartment? Yes, she called me. 3 weeks after the procedure. I froze completely. Why? Heavy silence. How did she get your number? I had to give. She said it was for emergencies. If something was wrong, if I needed help, then I gave the mobile number I use only for parish affairs. And did she call? Yes. Late at night. I was alone in the room. When I saw the unknown number, my heart almost stopped. I answered. What did she say? The nun took a deep breath, and then, with a voice that barely seemed human, she said she had saved something from the procedure, and if I didn't pay more money, she would tell you all. It would show evidence. It would destroy me. She would tell everything. It would show evidence. The words echoed in the confessional as a funeral bell. I felt my throat dry. My heart beat hard, irregular. I tried to keep the composure, the pastoral calm I have maintained for decades, but it was failing. What kind of evidence? I asked, although part of me did not want to know the answer. The nun was silent for a long moment. I heard his trembling breath intertwined. When he finally spoke, his voice was just a whisper. She said she had kept fabric samples from the procedure. I felt cold through my spine. Samples, I repeated, the word weighing in my tongue like lead. For what? To prove that I was there, to prove what we did. She said she had kept in a bottle, in formaldehyde, and if she wanted to, she could show anyone, police, church, press. I closed my eyes tightly. The darkness behind my eyelids seemed less dark than that confession. And what did she want in return? Money, more money, 1,000 reais per month, every month, indefinitely, on a bribery. The word was not said aloud, but it hovered in the dense air between us. And the lady paid? Yes. The answer came quickly, almost embarrassed. At first, yes. I had no choice, Father. If she told, everything would collapse. My life, his life, the whole order. So I paid. Where did you take the money from? Economies, small values that could divert from convent purchases, donations that should go to the ordinary box. I stole, Father. He stole from the church to pay a blackmail. The cruel irony of the situation did not go unnoticed. Sin on sin, layer on a layer of guilt accumulating like dirty snow. How long did it continue? 2 months. I paid twice. Pause. And then I stopped. Something in the way she said that made me freeze. Did you stop? I repeated slowly. Silence. Such a heavy silence that it seemed to suck the air from the confessional. Father, she hesitated, and I could feel that we were reaching the true core of confession. I did something terrible. Get my mind fired. What could be more terrible than anything she had ever counted? Continue, my daughter. She took a deep breath like someone about to dive into cold water. The third time she called me, charging the payment. I had no money. I had exhausted everything. I couldn't steal from the box without being noticed. Mother Superior was already asking questions about small differences in the values. And you said that to her? Yes. I said I didn't have it anymore. I needed time. And what did she answer? She laughed. The nun's voice was loaded with bitterness. He laughed and said I was lying. What nuns, they always had money hidden, that I found a way. And then, so she increased the value. Did you increase? Yes. He said it would now be 2,000 a month. And if I didn't pay in a week, she would go to the convent. Personally, battery at the door. She would talk to Mother Superior. I felt my stomach tighten. And that's when I started, but I didn't know how to finish the sentence. That's when I knew I needed to do something drastic. Then she described the days that followed with disturbing clarity. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. He spent hours in the garden near the place where the small body had buried, just looking at earth as if he sought answers that would never come. Prayed. But prayers did not bring peace. They brought only more questions, more guilt. I knew that if it appeared in the convent, it would all end. My consecrated life, my faith, my identity, all. So I started thinking about alternatives. What kind of alternatives? Long pause. Father, have you ever thought about what would you do if you were completely cornered, with no way out, when all doors close and only one remains ajar? I didn't answer. I just waited. I thought about running away, leave order, suing, but where? No money, no updated documents, no experience in the world outside the convent walls. I wouldn't survive a week. And then, so I thought about silence it. The word fell like a stone in the dark well of the confessional. Silence, I repeated. What exactly does that mean? She did not respond immediately, but I already knew. Deep down, I already knew. I went to her apartment, the nun said, her now distant, mechanical voice, as if narrating someone else's life. The night before the deadline she gave me. Tuesday, always Tuesday, as if that day were cursed. Did you go alone? Yes. I put on the same civil clothes. I left the same door side. I took the same route, but this time she took something with her. What? I asked, although my heart already knew. A knife, from the convent kitchen. Small, sharp, used to peel vegetables. I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of nausea. Father, your voice broke. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know if I was thinking. Just, I knew I needed to do something. I needed her to stop. She knocked on the door of apartment 304. 3 knocks. As the first time, the woman opened. It didn't seem surprised, only bored. Did you bring the money? No, but I need to talk to you. The woman hesitated, but she opened the door completely. 5 minutes. I don't have all night. Inside the apartment, the smell was the same. Disinfectant, alcohol, something organic and old. Then, the woman said, crossing her arms. What do you want? More time, please, just a few more weeks. No, the answer was dry. I already gave you time. The deal was clear. You pay or I speak. Simple as that. But I don't have it. It's not my problem. The woman turned her back, heading towards the tiny kitchen. You should have thought about it before you come here. That's when the nun saw the bottle. It was on the shelf, small, of transparent glass, full of yellowish liquid, and inside, something floating, small, indistinct, but unmistakable. You really kept, the nun whispered. The woman looked back and smiled, a cold, cruel smile. Sure. Life insurance, do you think I'm stupid? Something inside the nun broke at that moment. And that's when, she stopped, her chipped voice. That's when I took the knife in my pocket. My heart stopped for a moment. My daughter, I started, but my voice failed. I did not plan, Father. I swear to God that I did not plan. But at that moment, seeing that bottle, seeing her there with that smile, I act. She described what happened next in fragments, broken words, confused memories. The woman turned completely on her back, filling a glass of water. The nun took 3 silent steps, raised his hand, and I don't remember exactly. It's as if my mind has erased that moment, but I remember. I remember the sound. What sound? The sound of her falling, batting on the floor of linoleum, and then the silence. My breathing was stuck in the chest. Did she die? Pause. Long. Terrible. I don't know, Father. What do you mean, don't you know? I didn't wait to check. She fell. There was blood. Lots of blood. She didn't move, and I panicked. The nun described how she left the apartment in shock. It didn't run. He walked fast but controlled. He hid the knife in his pocket, wrapped in a cloth. It didn't take a taxi. He walked to the convent, more than an hour of walking, in the dark, alone. When I arrived, I was almost dawn. I entered. I climbed to the bedroom. I took off my clothes. I washed my hands. I burned my clothes in the garden where... She didn't finish the sentence. And the bottle? I asked. Did you get it? Yes. The answer came low. Before I left, I grabbed the bottle. I hid under my coat. And where is it now? Silence. Buried. Along with the rest. My mind struggled to process everything. If the woman died, there was a body. Investigation. Police. And was there any news? Police? Something? Yes. His voice was broken now. 3 days later. Appeared in the local newspaper. Woman found dead in apartment. Did you roll? No. Someone must have entered later. Or the police assumed it was theft. And there were no suspects? No. She had no family. She had no friends. No one asked. No one cared. The nun sobbed. And I live every day knowing that maybe I killed her. See, the weight of those words filled each inch of the confessional. I should say something, offer some word of consolation, of spiritual orientation, but it was paralyzed. Father Matthew still doesn't know anything? I asked finally. No, he continues his normal life, preaching, smiling, as if nothing had happened. And the lady, how have you lived? I haven't lived, priest. His voice was just an echo. I exist, I breathe, move, but inside, I'm dead. Long pause. And there's something worse. My blood froze. Worse? How can there be something worse? She took a deep breath, tremula, desperate, because he's starting to suspect. Who? Father Matthew. He has asked questions. Look at me strangely. And yesterday, she stopped, the voice breaking completely. Yesterday he asked me to meet, alone. He said he needs to tell me something urgent. He wants to tell me something urgent. The words still echoed in the confessional when I felt my stomach collapse. When? I asked, my voice coming out tense of what I intended. Tomorrow, Thursday, 3 in the afternoon, in the old chapel, behind the parish cemetery. The old chapel, abandoned for years, where no one goes, where no one listens. And the lady, are you? I have no choice, Father. His voice was charged with despair. If I don't go, he'll be even more suspicious. And if he already knows something, she didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to. What do you think he found out? Long silence. Heavy. I don't know. But in the last few days, he's been looking at me differently, as if trying to read something on my face, as if I were looking for cracks in the mask I've been wearing. She paused, breathing with difficulty. And yesterday, during Mass, when he distributes communion, he held my hand for a second more and whispered, "We need to talk. It's about that." That one? Yes, just that. As if I knew I would understand. As if there was something among us that you didn't have to be named. But the story didn't end there, because the meeting she feared had happened. Father, your voice changed again. It got lower, more broken. I'm not telling you that in the future. I'm telling you, later. My heart stopped. After? Yes, the meeting was today, 3 hours ago. I felt the air escape from my lungs. She was there in the confessional, not before the meeting, but later. And if I was there confessing, it was because something terrible had happened. My daughter, what happened in that chapel? She described every detail with a precision that seemed to hurt her physically. He arrived at the old chapel at 3 in point. The place was isolated, hidden by old trees and dense shrubs. The construction was in ruins. Cracked walls, partially collapsed ceiling, moss-covered rotting seats. But he was already there, with back to the entrance, looking at the destroyed altar. "Father Matthias?" she called, her voice echoing on the empty walls. He turned slowly, and she saw her face. He was crying, priest, tears down his face, red eyes, and at that moment I knew something was terribly wrong. He said nothing at first, just looked at her, a long, penetrating look loaded with something she could not identify immediately. Pain, anger, fear. Then he said, his trembling voice, hoarse, "I know, 2 words, only 2, but they were enough to make her world collapse." "Do you know what?" she asked, pretending confusion, trying to gain time. "About you, about what happened, about everything." She felt her legs were weak. He held on one of the old seats not to fall. "I don't know what you're talking about. Please." He stepped toward her. "Don't lie, not now, not after all." "Matthew, I saw." The words hit her like a slap. "See what?" "I saw you, 2 months ago, leaving at night, dressed different, calling a taxi." She froze. "I was worried. I thought something was wrong, so I followed you." The confessional seemed to shrink around me as she told. Father Matthew had followed her that night, the first night, when she went to apartment 304 for the first time. He saw her enter the old building, waited. He saw her out hours later, staggers, pale. He didn't know what I had gone to do there, but he suspected. He said he tried to call me the next day, but I didn't answer. He tried to look for me in the convent, but they said I was sick. Then he returned to the building, asked discreet questions, discovered who lived in apartment 304, a woman, no registered profession, known in the neighborhood for helping other women. And he understood, the nun said, her voice breaking. He understood what I had done, or at least part of it. "And what did he say when he told you this today?" He asked me if it was his. Absolute silence. "And was it?" I asked, although I knew the answer. "Yes." Father Matthew collapsed when she confirmed. He fell to his knees on the dirty floor of the chapel. He put his hands on his face and cried like a child. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you give me a chance to do something?" "Do what?" she answered, her cold voice. "Assume? Leave the priesthood? Create a child that would destroy both our lives? But you took my choice. You took your choice. It wasn't a child yet. It was just, no." He got up, clearing his tears angrily. "Don't try to justify. Don't try to diminish. It was my son, and you killed him." The words fell like stones. The nun did not answer, because there was no answer. "And there is more," he said, his voice now different, darker. "There's something you don't know." "What?" He took a deep breath. "The woman, the apartment. I knew her." Her world stopped. "How did you know?" She had come to me months ago, asking for help, saying she was in danger, that people threatened her because of what she was doing. I prayed with her. I gave her some money. I said she should stop." He paused, and when I saw the news in the newspaper that she had been killed, something inside me knew. I knew what? That there was a connection, that you were involved. The nun retreated, leaning against the cold wall of the chapel. "You're crazy. Don't lie," he shouted for the first time. "I went there. I went to the apartment after she died. I spoke to neighbors. One of them said she saw a woman entering the night of the crime. Short, haired woman. Deadly silence. And then I looked at you, and I knew. and the nun described what she felt at that moment as if she was falling into a deep-bottomed well. I denied it. I denied everything. I said he was delirious, that the guilt was consuming him, but he wouldn't stop looking at me. That look, it was as if he could see it through me. So what? So he said something that destroyed me. Long pause. He said, I will tell you. I will confess everything. Our relationship, the pregnancy, my suspicions. I go to the police if I need to because I can no longer carry it alone. My blood froze. And what did you answer? I begged. I fell on my knees. I asked him not to do that. That would end everything. May our lives, our families, the whole church would be destroyed. And he said he didn't care anymore, that the fault was worse than any consequences. He needed to get rid of that weight. She paused, breathing with difficulty, and that's when I saw it. See what? The knife. My heart fired. What knife? It was there, played on the chapel floor. Old, rusty, probably left by someone who used the place to, I don't know, but it was there. Heavy silence. And I got it. The words came out as if each weighing tons. Father, I don't know what happened to me. It was as if something inside me broke completely. As if all the blame, all the fear, all despair turned into anger. And then, I got up, with the knife in my hand, and he looked at me, not afraid, with disappointment, as if he was finally seeing who I really was. She sobbed. And I couldn't, Father, I couldn't do it. I waited, holding my breath. But he saw the intention. He saw what I went through my head, and something in it broke too. What happened next was described in painful fragments. Father Matthew retreated. He stumbled on a broken bank. It fell. He hit his head in the corner of an old stone. The sound was horrible, dry, and then silence. He didn't move, Father. He stayed there, eyes open, blood spreading slowly on the floor. Did you die? I don't know. His voice was just a ghostly whisper. I panicked. I didn't check, I ran. Did you run? Yes. I left everything. The knife, and I ran back to the convent. She described the desperate race through the streets, the heart beating, the empty mind, the body on autopilot. When he arrived at the convent, he locked himself in the room. It washed the face, exchanged with clothes, and waited. He waited for the police to knock on the door. Happy the news. He waited for the world to collapse. But nothing happened. Not yet. And I don't know if he's alive or dead. I don't know if he's going to tell everything. I don't know anything. And the confessional was dipped in absolute silence. My mind struggled to process everything. 2 possible deaths. A certain, another uncertain. Secrets buried literally in the garden. A nun who had become, what? Victim? Killer? Both? Father? His voice was just an echo now. I came here because if he dies, I need someone to know. I need someone to carry it with me. Because I can't take it anymore. What if he's alive? So it's a matter of time. He will tell, and my life ends anyway. Long pause. But there's something I haven't told you yet, Father. Something that changes everything. My heart accelerated again. What? She took a deep breath, tremula. When I ran from the chapel, I heard something. What? Passos. Behind me. Someone was there. Someone saw. Someone saw. The words were suspended in the air like ashes after a fire. My heart beat hard, irregular. For the first time in decades of confessions, I felt that I was facing something that surpassed my ability to offer comfort, something that transcended my spiritual authority, something that put me not only as a witness, but as a silent accomplice. Who? I asked, although part of me I didn't want to know. I don't know. His voice was just a thread now, thin as smoke dissipating. Or I saw the steps, fast, fleeing the side of the chapel, but I didn't see the face. I saw nothing. Just, I knew someone was there, feeling our presence, listening to our voices, witnessing everything. She paused. It breathed with difficulty, a hoarse, painful sound, like someone who just ran for hours. And that person knows everything, from my relationship with him, from the pregnancy, of the fight. I closed my eyes. The weight of that confession was crushing not only her but also to me. For the first time, I truly understood what it means to carry the sins of others. It's not just listening, it is absorbing. It is letting those words lighten inside you like glass fragments that can never be completely removed. And what did you do after hearing the steps? I went back to the convent, but I didn't run. I walked, slow, as if I were in a trance, as if my body knew the way, but my mind were elsewhere. And she described the hours that followed with painful, almost clinical accuracy. Entered the side door of the convent, climbed the stairs. He passed Sister Lucia in the hall, waved. He smiled slightly. He said he had gone to walk to lighten the mind. Sister Lucia didn't suspect anything, locked in the room, took the habit. He folded him carefully. He put it in his chair, as he did every night. He washed his hands, cold water, lavender-smelling soap. He rubbed each finger. every nail as if he could wash more than physical dirt. He looked in the small mirror above the sink and did not recognize itself. Who was that woman? She whispered. That pale face, those empty eyes, that dead expression. It wasn't me. Or maybe that's who I always went, and only now was seeing the truth. He lay on the bed. He looked at the ceiling until daylight turned into full darkness. Did not eat, did not drink water, just existed. He waited a knock on the door, a connection, a news, the police, the Mother Superior, anything, but nothing happened. Silence was worse than any accusation, Father, because I didn't know. I didn't know if he was alive or killed. I didn't know if the witness would speak or keep the secret. I didn't know if the door would open any time and everything would crumble. At 9 at night, they knocked on the door. Her heart almost exploded in her chest. He sat on the bed. It took a deep breath, prepared for the inevitable. You can enter. The door opened slowly. It was Sister Teresa, smiling as always, bringing a tray with tea and oat cookies. You didn't come to dinner. We are worried. Is everything okay? The nun forced a smile. Yes, just, tired. Very tired. Sister Teresa left the tray on the table. He put his hand on her shoulder, a kind maternal gesture. Rest, honey. Tomorrow is a new day. And left. Normal life. As if the world had not collapsed. As if there was no blood in an abandoned chapel. As if there was no small body buried in the garden. As if everything was normal. And that's when I understood, Father. His voice was loaded with deep existential sadness. I understood that nothing had changed out there. Life continued. People smiled. They prayed. They slept. Only here, inside me, everything had died. I carry an entire cemetery inside my chest, and nobody sees. No one knows. But there was one more thing she needed to tell. This morning, she said, her voice shaking like sheet in the wind, I went to the chapel, alone, before dawn. I needed to know. I could no longer endure uncertainty. It was as if my mind was shattering, creating 1,000 different scenarios, each worse than the previous one. And what did you find? Long pause. Heavy. Suffocating. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. There was no body. There was no blood. There were no marks on the stone where it fell. There was no signs that something had happened. My blood fell completely. What do you mean, nothing? Exactly that, Father. The floor was clean, as if someone had erased all the evidence, or as if she didn't finish the sentence. But I knew what she was thinking. As if he had never fallen, I completed. Yes, exactly. And that is terrified of me even more, because if there was no body, then or he got up and left, or someone carried him. And if anyone carried it, so that person knows everything, I finished. Yes, absolute silence, so dense that it seemed to have a physical substance, so he can be alive. I don't know. Maybe yes. Maybe someone has taken the body elsewhere. Maybe I have imagined everything. Maybe I'm mad, Father. Maybe nothing I told is real. Maybe it's all a hallucination of a mind too guilty to endure the weight. His voice broke completely. I don't know what is real anymore. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm a nun, signs, a victim of the circumstances, someone who loved too much, someone who sinned beyond forgiveness, all at the same time. Nothing, she sobbed, a low sound, contained, loaded with years of compressed pain. I was silent for a long time, very long. The words did not come easily. For the first time in my priestly life, I didn't know what to say. There were no biblical verses that made sense. There were no words of consolation not to sound empty. There was no acquittal to erase that. I thought of all the confessions I heard over decades. Thefts, adulteries, lies, betrayals, violence. But nothing compared to that. Because it was not just a sin, it was a waterfall, one after the other. Each one trying to cover up the previous one, each creating the need of others. Father, she called, her desperate, almost childish voice. Say something, please. I need to hear that. There is still salvation to me. I'm not completely lost. May God still look at me. I took a deep breath, very deep. My daughter, I started, but my own voice failed. I swallowed dry and tried again. What you did, what happened, is beyond what I can easily acquit. It's beyond the formulas I learned at the seminary. It's beyond moral and sin manuals. I heard you sobbage now, without control, but I continued, forcing firmness in the voice. God sees what men do not see. He sees despair. He sees the pain. He sees the circumstances that push us into abyss we never imagined falling. He sees the love that turned into guilt. He sees the faith that broke under the weight of reality. Pause. But that doesn't mean he forgives automatically. It only means that he understands, and perhaps, only perhaps, there is mercy on understanding. So he forgives me? Long pause. Honest. I don't know, my daughter. This is between you and him. I'm just a man, a priest who listens, an intermediary, but I can't speak for God in such cases. I can't give certainty where I don't have them. Heavy silence fell between us like a lead curtain. But I can say something, I added, leaning slightly toward the grid. You need to decide who wants to be from now on. If you will carry this weight forever like a stone that sinks it more and more, or if you will find a way to live with it, load without being completely destroyed. How? How do you do this, Father? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe serving others with more dedication. Maybe carrying their guilt like a silent cross that reminds you every day the price of choices. Maybe just existing, one day at a time, until weight diminishes. Maybe it may never decrease. Maybe that's your burden to the end. She was silent for a long time. So much time I thought it had passed out or simply missing. So finally, he said, and his voice was different now, calmer, resigned, like someone who finally accepted the inevitable. What if he appears? If Father Matthew is alive and telling everything, if he recovers his memory and denouncing me, then you will face the consequences. And perhaps it is the only true way to peace, the liberating truth, even if it destroys everything in the process. Peace. She laughed bitterly, a dry sound, lifeless. There will be no peace for me, Father, never again, neither in this life nor the next. I know that. I feel it in the bones. I didn't disagree, because deep down she was right. Some actions create permanent marks on the soul, scars that never come out completely. And the witness? The person you saw in the chapel? If she speaks, he will speak. If he does not speak, her silence will be another cross that she will carry, because witnessing and silent is also a choice. And every choice has consequences. Pause. We all carry crosses, my daughter. Some visible, some hidden. Yours, it's the heaviest I've heard in 30 years of confessional, but it's not unique. There are others. There are always. Gardens full of buried secrets, chapels full of invisible blood, hearts full of guilt that never completely confessed. I hear her move on the other side of the grid, getting up slowly, adjusting the habit with trembling hands, the sound of the fabric brushing, the sound of controlled breathing. So, is there no acquittal? I took a deep breath, very deep, weighing every word that was about to say. There is regret, there is confession. This is already something, but full acquittal, complete, I can't give. Not in this case. Not with so much uncertainty. Not with possible unresolved deaths. Not with buried secrets that can surface at any time. Heavy pause. But I can offer understanding, listen, and the commitment that it remains here, between these walls, between us and God. I understand. His voice was strangely calm now, as if, in mind, I had found an answer, even if it was the worst possible answer. The answer that confirms that some things will never be resolved. They will never be forgiven completely. Just loaded. What will you do now? I asked, genuinely curious and worried. I don't know. Go back to the convent. Keep pretending I'm the same person as it was before. Smiling to the sisters. Praying at masses. Work at the hospital. Take care of the sick. And wait. Wait what? The inevitable. She opened the door of the confessional slowly. The weak light of the church entered the crack, partially illuminating its face through the dark veil. I saw your eyes for the first time. I really saw it. Red, swollen, but above all, empty, like someone who had already died inside but whose body still insisted on continuing to function. His faith was visible. It was in the gestures, in posture, in the way the crucifix hanging around the neck. But his words carried shadows. He said he had broken votes that could never be restored. And when he got up, I understood that some blame even his own faith can forgive. Thank you for listening, Father. There is no one. Lie. There was everything of what? Because now that weight was also over me. Now I also carried part of that cemetery. And I could never tell anyone. Never. She stepped out of the confessional. Stopped. It turned slightly. Only the visible profile in the dimness. Father, if one day they discover, if all comes to light, if the witness speaks, if Father Matthew recovers his memory, the Lord cannot tell. Never. The confessional's confidentiality is sacred, isn't it? Yeah, I confirmed, though my voice sounded hollow. Sacred and inviolable, under penalty of excommunication. So, it dies here, between us and God forever. Yes, forever. She nodded slowly, and left. His steps echoed through the empty ship, each sound a beaten of funeral bell, each echo a reminder of the weight we now carry together but separate. When the side door closed behind her, the silence returned, absolute, suffocating, mortal. I was sitting at the confessional for more than an hour, maybe 2. I lost the notion of time. I couldn't move me, I couldn't think clearly. Just existed, breathed, with the weight of that confession crushing my chest like an increasingly heavy stone. I thought of the small body buried in the convent garden, in the vial hidden on the damp land, in the wife of apartment 304, or not by your hands, in Father Matthew, alive or dead, somewhere, perhaps carrying the same guilt, perhaps without any memory, and in the witness, someone who saw, someone who knows, someone who right now also carries the weight of that secret. How many people carry secrets like this? How many hidden tombs exist in convent gardens, in basements, in forgotten corners of abandoned chapels? How many smiling faces hide whole cemeteries inside the chest? How many confessions like this have I heard over the years, and how many are yet to come? When I finally managed to get up, my legs were numb. They tingled painfully when I tried to take the first steps. I left the confessional. The church was completely empty now. The janitor had gone away for hours. The candles were all erased except the red lamp of the blessed. I walked to the altar, slowly, each step costing a huge effort. I knelt. I joined my hands. I tried to pray, but the words did not come, just images, her face through the grid, the tears she held throughout the confession, the despair in the voice, and the absolute emptiness in the eyes when he finally opened the door and left. God, I whispered to the empty silence of the church, what do I do with this? How do I carry this? How do I keep celebrating masses, preaching about forgiveness, on mercy, knowing what I know? No answer came, maybe because there was no answer, perhaps because some questions need to be unresolved, perhaps because the weight of certain secrets is just that, a burden that is carried to the end, without relief, no resolution, just wait. 2 days later, I heard news. He was having breakfast with other diocese priests when Father Antonio entered the hasty room, with a newspaper in his hand. Did you see? Father Matthew was found. My heart stopped for a moment. Found? What do you mean? I live in a hospital in another city, 2 hours here. They say he suffered an accident. He fell on a trail. He hit his head. He was unconscious for hours. A wanderer found him the next day and called help. I tried to keep the expression neutral, but my mind was accelerated. And how is he? Recovering. But there is something strange. Father Antonio lowered his voice. Partial loss of memory. You don't remember several days. You don't remember certain recent events. Another priest commented, head trauma can cause this. Temporary amnesia. Or permanent, added Father Antonio. Doctors don't know yet. I was silent, drinking my coffee slowly, processing. Father Matthew was alive, but without memory of certain events. Convenient. Terribly convenient. Or maybe it was divine protection. God's way of erasing what should not be remembered. Or maybe he was pretending. Protecting yourself. Protecting her. Protecting both. I didn't say anything. I couldn't say anything. 3 days later, I went to visit him at the hospital. It was in a private room, alone, sitting on the bed looking out the window. When I entered, he turned his face. He smiled weakly. Father, good to see him. How are you feeling? Better. The headache has decreased, but there are gaps. Pieces missing. It's strange. I sat in the chair by the bed. What do you remember? He thought for a moment. I remember the last Mass I celebrated. I remember some pastoral visits. But then, everything is hazy, as if someone had erased parts of the movie. And is there nothing specific to disturb you? Something you feel should remember but can't? He looked at me straight in the eyes, and for a short moment, I saw something there. A flash, a recognition, but then disappeared. No, nothing specific, just a void. I nodded slowly. We talked about trivial things, the recovery, the plans to return, the masses that would need to be rescheduled. When I got up to leave, he held my wrist, gently. Father, if I forgot something important, something I shouldn't have forgotten, is it better like that? I looked at him, and at that moment I knew. He remembered, or at least, part of him remembered, but I had chosen to forget. Sometimes, I said calmly, memory is a blessing. Sometimes it's a curse, and sometimes, forgetting is mercy. He nodded. He released my wrist, and he looked back out the window. I didn't say anything else, and I left carrying another layer of silence. Alai Genshi, the nun, continues in the convent, every day, as if nothing had happened. I cross with it occasionally, in the masses, in the pastoral meetings, on visits to the hospital where she works. She smiles politely, greets in a soft voice, pray the third with the other sisters. No one suspects, no one knows, no one imagines the cemetery she carries inside her chest. Just me, and maybe Father Matthew, in some forgotten corner of his mind, and the witness, whoever it is, somewhere, carrying its own silent burden, and the weight of this knowledge. This weight remains, every day, every night. When I celebrate Mass and distribute communion, sometimes our hands touch. She holds the host. Our eyes are for a second fraction, and at that moment, speechless, everything is said again. You know, I know you know, and we will both carry it forever. The ska serum today. When I pass through the garden of any church, I look at the forgotten corners, to the places where herbs grow without control, where wildflowers spring disorderly, and I wonder, how many secrets are buried there? How many small lives interrupted rest under the holy earth? How many stories never told rotate silently as people walk over, unknowingly, without imagining? How many invisible crosses are carried by habit and cassock? How many rosaries prayed with hands that held things that should never have held? I don't know, and maybe it's better that way, because there are truths that, once known, change us forever. And there are confessions that once heard never leave us alone. They lodge inside you, create roots. They grow as weeds impossible to start, and you learn to live with them, or try, day after day, night after night, until the weight becomes part of you, until you can no longer distinguish where you end and where the burden begins. I closed the confessional door that night, but her words still chase me to this day. Father, I broke my votes. Yes, she broke, completely, irreparably, votes of chastity, of poverty, of obedience, and perhaps the most important of all, the vow not to cause harm. But in a way, we all break, to a greater or lesser extent, invisible or invisible ways. Only a few pay a higher price, and carry tombs where there should be gardens. They carry blood where there should be prayers. They carry silences where there should be complete confessions. Oh, a few weeks ago I returned to the old chapel, where it all happened, alone, at dusk, when sunlight dies slowly and the shadows grow. I went slowly. The place remains in ruins, cracked walls, partially collapsed ceiling, moss-covered seats and dried leaves. I looked for the stone, the one where he supposedly hit his head. It was there, a sharp corner, dark spots that could be mold or old blood, impossible to say. I knelt, not to pray, just to be there, feel the place, try to understand what happened that day. And then I heard steps behind me. I turned quickly, heart fired, but there was no one, just the wind, moving dry leaves, creating sounds that looked like steps. Or maybe the witness still visit this place, just like me, trying to sue, trying to understand. I will never know. And today is Thursday. Tomorrow I will celebrate Mass again. I will preach about forgiveness, about mercy, about the infinite compassion of God, and she will be there, in the first row, like always, smiling, singing the hymns, commanding, and Father Matthew will be too, has already returned to your duties, celebrating, preaching, smiling at the faithful, and I will be on the altar, lifting the host, pronouncing the sacred words I have pronounced for decades, and on the outside, everything will seem normal, beautiful, sacred, but inside I carry the weight of knowing that garden santos hide unholy tombs, the weight of knowing that white habits wear stained souls, the weight of knowing that confessioners keep secrets that should never exist, and I will continue to carry, because this is my cross, to listen, shut up to load, until the day I need to get into a confessional, and tell someone the unbearable weight of keeping the secrets of others. But that night I closed the confessional door for the last time that week, but her words still echo. They echo when the empty corridors of the church. They echo when I pass the garden and see the forgotten corners. They echo when I celebrate the Mass and I see its serene face among the faithful. I broke my votes, priest. Yes, and somehow, in that confessional, that day, something inside me also broke, and it will never be the same again.